Hey everybody, see what little hair I got. Let's make it look good. Glad to be with you. I want to take as many questions as we can. Just met with the State Hospital Association about what's going on in our hospitals. Since Memorial Day, we've had a real spike and they need more testing, faster testing. They're having staff problems. A lot of the doctors and nurses are beginning to get the disease itself, kind of taken out of the game. So we'll do phase 4 here soon in Washington, and we're going to try to make sure they got the PPE they need to protect themselves and the public when they treat COVID patients. But the one takeaway that I can share with everybody is that to a person, they urged the population, us, to practice social distancing, wash our hands, and wear a mask when we're around others. If we will do that, the hospitals and all the doctors and nurses said it would tremendously help. Excuse me there. I would encourage you to do it. Just had Chick-fil-A here. If you want to help those who are fighting this war against COVID, the frontline folks, wear a mask, wash your hands, and use common sense. All right, let's take questions. Okay. Bill from Darling, I just want to know if we're getting another stimulus check. There'll be a stimulus check. I don't know how much and to who. My belief is that those on Social Security that are making $50,000 and $60,000 as their total income, that we need to help people, seniors on Social Security and the middle to lower income levels, because they're going to be the last to get out of the house. They're most vulnerable when it comes to COVID, and the ability to get out and about is reduced for this population. And the cost of groceries are going up because the supply chain has been affected. So definitely for our seniors, and we'll see what the market bears in terms of a larger stimulus check. In terms of stimulus, Bill, I want to do a payroll tax holiday, a 6.2% tax cut for all people working and their employers, which would put money in people's pocket. I'm looking for a stimulus package that will jumpstart the economy. I want to help people who are unemployed, who've lost their job because of COVID and no fault of their own. But the current $600 a month payment from the federal government has created a disincentive for people to go back to work. I want to help you if you lost your job, but you shouldn't be paid more in unemployment than you do at work. So we will be helping people with unemployment checks, but we're going to have to change the current formula because it's disincentivizing people from going back to work. So the stimulus package I'm looking for is to jumpstart the economy, put money in people's pocket through a payroll tax cut, and I certainly am willing to help seniors on fixed incomes with a payment. Okay. Matt from Sumter. Will there be protections for healthcare workers that get COVID while working? Seems unfair to go into debt thousands of dollars for medical care because of exposure while serving as frontline healthcare workers. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. So, in the war on terror, it's fallen on 1%, the military and people associated with the military to go fight the terrorists. And here, all of us can do some good. We're all soldiers in this war. The frontline healthcare worker at our hospitals are pretty much, they're under siege right now. We still have enough beds. It's just a staffing problem. So I will do whatever I can to make sure that hospitals get reimbursed for the increased cost of PPE. They're having to go to China and Mexico to buy this. I've got a bill to incentivize it to be made in America, which would be helpful. But when it comes to money to make sure hospitals can continue to pay their frontline workers, the doctors and nurses count me in. If we can think of a bonus for them, like you would to the military, I'd be willing to do that. I'm with you. They're busting their butt to keep the rest of us safe, and we need to take any burdens they have financially off their backs the best we can. So it's a really good idea. Stacy, I would like to know what you have done over the course of the last 2 weeks to specifically address, meet, and support the needs of your constituents in South Carolina. Well, I've been at home for 2 weeks. I just met with the hospital association. We did a virtual meeting where I had every region of the state tell me about their testing needs, and we need to do more testing, not less. Turnaround times are too long. About staff shortages and the increased cost of PPE. I'm going over to Florence later in the day, talk to some Republican Party folks, but I've spent my time getting out and about, talking to business people about what a phase 4 package would look like. I've toured some facilities that do PPE production and how they would benefit if we brought the supply chain back into the United States. So it's been a good time to just kind of listen to people, spend a little time with my family, played a little bit of golf. So every day in South Carolina is a blessing as far as I'm concerned, but it's been two productive weeks, and got some other things to do this week. So I just try to stay in touch, and the best way to stay in touch is just get out and about and talk to people. And we've had a lot of virtual meetings with Tim Scott. Tim's been really great to do business with. So it's been very productive, and I've been in this job since 2002, and I think my worst critic wouldn't deny that I have a decent work ethic. I think I work hard. I enjoy my job, and I really look forward to coming home and talking to people, make sure I know what works in Washington and South Carolina. Okay. David, happy belated birthday. We need you in the Senate. Well, thank you, David. I agree with that part. The only way I'm going to stay in the Senate is people keep me there. You know, I'm not entitled to this job. I've got a well-funded opponent, and the people wanting to beat me, most of them are not from South Carolina. They embrace the most liberal, radical agenda in modern American history. And this contest in South Carolina has been nationalized because of my defense of Judge Kavanaugh and my willingness to help President Trump. I've become a target for the liberal left. The amount of money being raised in South Carolina Senate race is unprecedented, and it's coming from people who have their hopes and dreams to create a socialist nation, and on and on and on. I turned 65. I'm feeling pretty good. I feel blessed. I never dreamed that I'd be a senator growing up, and I really enjoy the job more today, David, than I've ever enjoyed it. I think I'm better at it. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan 57 times, so I try to do my homework when it comes to national security. And I'm just going to keep fighting for the causes I believe in. One is to work with the other side when it makes sense, to make sure conservative judges get on the court. We've confirmed 200 judges in the last 3 years, and as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, we've pumped out a lot of conservative judges. I look forward to a phase 4 package that will help the economy. So thank you for those nice comments, and I appreciate the birthday wishes. Will you only answer scripted questions today, or will you answer why you won't condemn Trump ignoring Putin, putting bounties on U.S. soldiers, or a shameful lie about Stone sentencing? Okay, yeah, well, I assume this is not a scripted, maybe scripted from the Democratic Party, but I'll be glad to talk about it. I've been a pretty hawkish guy. Putin's not our friend. I'm the leading Republican on a sanctions package against Russia. Putin's been up to no good all over the world, and he's not a friend of the country. It was the Russians who hacked into the DNC, not the Ukrainians. It was the Russians who stole Clinton's emails. And it was the Russians who, I think, provided the garbage to Christopher Steele called the dossier. When it comes to battlefield situations, I take them seriously. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan probably as much as anybody, more than most. And I've learned a lot. What have I learned? You can't go off half-cocked. I had an intel briefing about the allegation of Russians paying bounties to kill Americans. The Russians have been supplying weapons to the Taliban for a very long time. The level of intelligence that the Russians were doing this was, I think, shaky at best. We've had one war where we didn't have a full picture. I was convinced, along with the military, that this was not an actionable item, that there was some intel being gathered in prisons about this concept, but the best intel we had was pretty sophisticated intelligence gathering in terms of technology. And I did not believe this rose to the level of confronting Russia, because it's a serious allegation and we changed our force protection posture. But to those who push this narrative that Trump ignored it, that's just a bunch of political BS. I'll take a backseat to no one about trying to protect the troops in the field, but pretty hawkish guy. But I've also learned you need to find out before you pull the trigger. And military leaders have said that this episode wasn't sufficiently verified to take action. Whether you believe me or not, you ought to believe them. As to Roger Stone, you'll be hearing more about Crossfire Hurricane. You'll be hearing more about the Mueller investigation. I supported Mueller being able to do his job without being fired except for cause. There was a time there when President Trump was pounding on Mueller pretty hard, and I felt like it was important for Mueller to finish his job without political interference, and he did. And the whole idea that the Trump campaign was colluding with the Russians just wasn't accurate. And I wish people in the media who spent every minute of every day breathlessly analyzing Trump's coordination and collusion with Russia would spend a little bit of time on the fact that the Crossfire Hurricane investigation was probably one of the most corrupt episodes in the history of the FBI. Most FBI agents, 99%, I'm sure, are great. But stay tuned. But nobody in the media gives a damn. The FISA court rebuked the Department of Justice for using material to get a warrant that was completely unverified. Every time the FBI, DOJ, McCabe, Comey, and that crowd found a problem with the case, they lied about it and kept pushing forward. So I made sure that Mueller could do his job. I'm going to make sure that we investigate the investigators. And as to Roger Stone, 67 years old, first offense, caught up in, I think, a political firestorm. I'm very much okay with commuting his sentence, and nobody said much about the times that Clinton commuted people convicted from Whitewater investigations. So I see it as a real double standard and don't take the criticism much at all. When is Durham report, and were you holding Obamagate actors accountable? Durham is a prosecutor. I am not. What can I do as Judiciary Chairman? I can try to explain how the FISA warrant process got off the rails. I can explain the best I can how the system failed. Why was General Flynn continued to be surveilled in January, after January the 4th, when the professional field staff, the people actually doing the investigation, recommended that Flynn be dropped from Crossfire Hurricane on January the 4th. What was that January the 5th meeting all about with Obama and Biden, where they continued to surveil Flynn? How is it possible that they could continue to use the dossier that Christopher Steele prepared to get a warrant against Carter Page, when in January the 21st through the 24th, the FBI interviewed the Russian subsource, provided Steele all the information contained in the dossier, and told the FBI it was a bunch of hearsay and garbage, and they kept using it in April and June of 2017 to get a warrant. Yeah, we're going to hold these people accountable. I'm not a prosecutor, but I do believe that the lying and manipulation to the FISA court needs to be dealt with seriously. And if you don't hold people accountable who mislead the court, then people lose faith in the entire process. So stay tuned. Durham is doing his job. I'm doing mine. In July, we'll be having some public hearings. I want Sally Yates to come and tell us about the January 5th meeting. She testified previously. So there's a lot to be done between now and September, and I'll eventually call Comey and McCabe, ask them questions about the investigation. I'd rather eat glass and drink mud than have lunch with you. Good news for you, you don't have to have lunch with me. If I were you, I wouldn't eat grass, and I'd probably go get some help. Okay. Let's see. Please protect our monuments, all of them. All right. South Carolina is a model for how you do things. We removed the Confederate flag from the top of the Capitol dome out front. Now the Confederate flag is flying in a historical park somewhere. People in Charleston removed the Calhoun Monument in Calhoun Square through a vote of the city council. These debates are worth having, but you do it through the rule of law, not the rule of mob. As to destroying monuments that represent who we are as a people, I stand completely with the president. George Washington was not perfect, but he was the founder of our nation. They created a process that was allowed to change over time to form a more perfect union. The people who are trying to destroy monuments to our founding fathers, who are now breaking into churches to put ablaze statues of the Virgin Mary, are crazy. They're radical. They're anarchist. They don't represent legitimate concerns about reforming the police. They have taken the George Floyd tragedy and hijacked it. And I am with President Trump that we should put these people in jail, use the military if necessary to protect our national heritage. And I, for one, am proud of America, warts and all. I'm glad Christopher Columbus discovered America. I'm glad my ancestors came here. I'm proud to be an American, and we're trying to work on our problems and become a more perfect union. But there is no better force for good on the planet than the United States, in my view. And I will be no part of running this country into the ground. And that issue is on the ballot. I'm sure Chick-fil-A agrees with that. Okay, you were complaining about the 600 for unemployment before they got it. I'll leave unemployment alone. Okay. What I will not do is continue to create a program at the federal level that makes it hard to get people back to work. Losing your job in the coronavirus epidemic, at no fault of your own, is something I'm very sympathetic to. Millions of people were laid off because we had to shut the economy down. Every state has an unemployment benefit. I reached out to Democrats and say, let's do a supplement. Let's help people. Well, what happened is that we did a $600 federal benefit on top of the state benefit. That's $924 a week for unemployment in South Carolina. That's over $23 an hour. It's making it hard for people in the service industry and other industries to get people to go back to work because you're literally paying them 50 and 100% more in unemployment than they were making working. So I am willing to help people who lost their jobs. I'm not willing to continue a program to pay people more in unemployment than they were making at work. Because what do you tell somebody who has still been working at $15, $16, $18 an hour in a hospital or a restaurant or wherever, and they're out there working, going to work every day. A lot of nurses' aides are making 18, 19 bucks an hour, and they're going in a COVID environment. Somebody not working is making 23 hour not to work. I want to help people who've lost their job, and I'm not going to create an incentive to pay you more out of work than when you're working. That makes no sense to me. And if I've learned anything in the last couple of months, we're never going to recover the economy until we change this benefit. Okay, our roads and bridges are crumbling. Amen to that. What oversight can your office provide regarding the theft or tax dollars supposedly being used to repair South Carolina roads? I don't really know exactly what you're talking about theft of highway dollars. I can tell you this: we don't have enough money for our roads and bridges. So I want to do an infrastructure package, Bruce, in phase 4, $1 trillion plus, to put federal money into the system to modernize our ports like Charleston, to build more roads and bridges. If you live in Lexington County, people come in there in large numbers. We just don't have the infrastructure, water, roads, and sewers. So when it comes to infrastructure, I think it should be part of phase 4. God knows America needs to have a facelift, but yes, we should jealously guard the dollars, and the less regulation within reason, the better, because it makes the money go forward. So count me in for an infrastructure package in phase 4 in terms of monitoring how the money is spent. I haven't really heard anything coming from Henry or our governor about misappropriation, but certainly we'll take that issue seriously. Thank you, Bruce. Marta, wouldn't have lunch with you unless you offered me $1 million. Don't change your plans. Okay, Larry, I saw a commercial of you praising Joe Biden. What's up with that? I like Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I've been friends with Joe for about 20 something years. He spoke at Senator Thurman's funeral when Senator Thurman passed. They had a real unique relationship, politically different, but personally friends. He's a fine, decent fellow. That clip was when I was out running for president. Joe's son Hunter, not Hunter, but Bo died, and I knew Bo pretty well. He served over in Afghanistan, and Joe Biden's had a lot of personal tragedy. So I will never say a bad word about Joe Biden as a person. I just don't think he's the right guy to be president. He's, in my view, a figurehead of the most radical movement in American history that's coming from AOC and that crowd. And so my differences with Joe Biden are political and they're real, they're wide and they're deep, but he's a fine man. Okay, Mike, when was the last time you spent an entire week in South Carolina? Last week. I'll be here this week. I come home virtually every weekend. We go up on Mondays and I come back on Thursday. And I either come back to Seneca or somewhere in South Carolina probably 90% of the time. I look forward to getting home and getting out and about the best I can. With the COVID crisis, it's been hard to meet people, so I do a lot of things, virtual meetings and town halls and Facebook Live, things like this. But yeah, I'll put my record up of staying in touch with the people of my state, with anybody in the Senate. Um, Defunding the police is a Marxist tactic. Why are Democrats allowed to push this agenda? Well, I think the people pushing this agenda are socialist and Marxist. You know, when the communists took over, they took weapons away from the people. They turned the police into a state organization protecting the state, not the public. So this defunding the police movement is nuts. Reforming the police, yes, but Democrats are not interested in reforming the police. If they were, they would have worked with Senator Scott, who put together a very big reform package to outlaw chokeholds and better training and deal with the problem of African Americans being targeted by the police more than anybody else. Tim had a really good package. We couldn't even bring it up to the floor of the Senate. So this idea of defunding the police is a nightmare for working people. It's a nightmare for poor people, because who needs the cops the most are people that live in high crime areas and the working poor. Rich people will find a way to protect themselves. We have some bad cops out there. Let's deal with them. We can do better when it comes to policing. Let's spend the money and the time and effort to reform policing. But when it comes to defunding the police, that's nuts. The vacuum would be filled by criminal elements and others. And I think this is a big issue. I've been a prosecutor, defense attorney, and a judge. I have a high opinion of those who would go into law enforcement. You walk up into the middle of the night to somebody you don't know in some remote part of South Carolina, and while the rest of us are sleeping. So when you get a bad cop, you deal with them forcefully. But this idea of declaring war on the police is nuts. And if you want to see what the world looks like without cops in the judicial system, come to the Mideast with me. I'll show you a lot of places where there are no police and no functioning legal system. See if you want to live there. Kathleen, I'm a big supporter. Thank you. I was confused and disappointed you didn't support halt new work visas for foreign workers. Very troubling with high unemployment. Good question, actually. So here's what I believe. Legal immigration is good. We've got a lot of people out of work, but we found over the last 30 years that there are certain jobs it's hard to get people here at home to do. If you ever been to a meat packing plant, Kathleen, come with me. Almost everybody working that plant is Hispanic or from outside the country. When you go to a hotel in South Carolina, you're going to find a lot of people from outside the country. You can't get a visa for a foreign worker until you advertise in the local area for native born workers. You have to pay more than minimum wage. You have to have a benefit package. Only when you can't find somebody can you get a visa for a foreign worker who comes in. You got to pay more than minimum wage. You got to provide health care. So employers, once they try to find workers here, then they can't, paying a competitive salary And I think it's best for us to be able to bring people in from outside the country, working, paying taxes, helping that company stay in America. If you're in the food business, if you're in the meat packing business, if you're in agriculture, you're in a lot of industries out there, you just can't find the workforce you need. And I promise you that with this high level of unemployment, we're not going to have a rush to fill meat packing jobs. So I think suspending these programs is going to hurt the economic recovery. And let me stress this: you can't get a foreign worker until you try, advertise, you have to prove it to the government that you sought an American worker and just couldn't find one. Uh, Diane, why didn't they put a limit on unemployment so you can't make more? You know, Diane, that's what I asked. I said, listen, we owned a restaurant, a bar, and a pool room when I was growing up. We had a couple of people helping us when business was good, and when it wasn't good, we did it all ourselves. But I can tell you right now, $23 an hour is what you make in unemployment benefits. There are a lot of jobs in South Carolina, small businesses paying $15, $17, $18 an hour, and they can't find workers because we're paying people more not to work than work. I want to help people be made whole who've lost their job. I want to give you your actual salary in unemployment, not pay you more. So if you're making $17 an hour in the workforce, you're getting $23 an hour not to work. It's hard to get people go back to work. I don't blame them. I blame the government for creating an incentive to stay unemployed because people are making more than going back to work. And 68% of the people in unemployment now throughout the country are making more in unemployment than were making at their job. So what I want to do, I'm willing to increase the minimum wage in a reasonable way. But wage scales have to be set up by our businesses so they can stay in business. The harder you work, the more you make over time is a concept that I cherish. I want to help people who've lost their job, but you cannot pay them more to be unemployed than they were making in work. And I said this the day we passed the bill. Everything I said has come true. You talk to employers in South Carolina, they're having a hard time finding workers, and it's created a roadblock to reopening the economy. I think being fair is giving people what they've lost at work. Being unwise is to pay people more than they were getting at work. That's the problem. Linda, why should we be buying prescription drugs from the U.S.? Oh, what does that say?
We should be buying prescription drugs in the U.S.
The question, Linda, is about the medical supply chain. 90% of our PPE, the equipment you need to take care of patients, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, comes from China. I just had a meeting with the Hospital Association today. They're going to Mexico and China because they're running out of PPE here. So I've got a bill that says the following. There's a law that requires military uniforms to be made in America because you don't want to have your uniforms be made by some foreign country. That puts your whole military at risk. You got to be able to clothe and feed your troops, right? I want to put PPE, the protective equipment for frontline healthcare workers, under the Berry Amendment to treat it the same as military uniforms. Then I want a tax credit for any company that will open up a PPE plant in America. You'll get a tax credit to hire people to make PPE in the country. That's one way to get it back out of China. China makes most of the compounds that go into antibiotics. Why did people move to China? It's just cheaper. No regulation, cheap wages. We got to create incentives to bring people back to America when it comes to medical supplies. And you're right about Canada. Canada is a friend, not a foe. You can't do everything in your own country, but you should make sure when it comes to medical supplies, the heart and soul of protecting your people, you don't have your fate in the hands of people who hate your guts like the Chinese. So bringing the supply chain back in the United States can be done through carrots and sticks, and having partners like China do some of the work, Canada doing some of the work makes sense to me. The goal is to get the supply chain out of the hands of the Communist Chinese Party. To my Democratic colleagues, help me. Mary, do you think our schools should fully open? I do. I do. It should be done based on local decision making. The goal should be to get people back to school. I'm willing to appropriate money to create capability to social distance and set up classrooms with smaller numbers of students, add capacity to schools, but we got to get our kids back in school. There's a risk to everything. I think the downside of keeping schools closed is devastating for children and parents who are working and just the mental health of the country. I think we can do this. I talked about hospitals today. They all said, we hope to go back to school. So I'm with the governor. We need to go back to school. We need to do it safely. We need to practice social distancing, wear masks, wash our hands. And how does this end, Mary? There'll be a vaccine sooner rather than later that can get the disease dealt with like we deal with the flu. We don't shut the schools down because people may get the flu. We don't sue businesses because you may get the flu if you go to a store. We need to get the coronavirus in a situation where we can control it like the flu with the vaccines and therapies, and that's where we're headed. Got to go back to school. Louise, what is your view on no-knock warrants? I think now's the time to put that issue on the table. No-knock warrants have their place in limited circumstances. I'm a big fan of law enforcement, but at the end of the day, I am willing to consider reform of no-knock warrants because one thing we've learned that we've got some systems that are a bit out of control out there. So I didn't think I would change my mind on this, but I quite frankly have based on what happened in Kentucky. Can we make people in Myrtle Beach wear masks? Janet. You know, we all should wear a mask, and I don't know if the government can make you. The states that have mandated masks seem to have a lower infection rate. Every doctor and hospital person on the phone call said if you would wash your hands, wear a mask, and social distance, things would get better quickly. Memorial Day was a disaster. We had this thing pretty well under control. Memorial Day, people went out in large numbers, didn't wear masks, and the infection rate is just going through the roof. Mandates, I don't know how you enforce it, but to the extent that my voice can help, for God's sake, wear a mask, wash your hands, and use common sense. If for no other reason, to take the burden off the doctors and the hospitals who are really having a hard time of it. So thank you, Janet. We'll see what happens here in South Carolina. Joan, why are the Republicans not fighting harder to win this election? Well, I don't know what you've been watching, but I'm out there pretty well going at it. I think it's an election we can't lose. We got to fight smart. You know, you got to show a difference between us and them. You know, Joe Biden, I'm sure he'd stay in his basement as long as he could. I don't blame him. I think the president's done a really good job on the stuff that matters to us. We rebuilt our military. The economy was going great before the virus. We got conservative judges on the bench. There's a lot to applaud from the last 3 years or so. But we got to take it to them in this regard. If you want illegal immigrants to get free health care, vote Democrat. If you want to lose your health care at work that you enjoy today, vote Democrat because they'll take it away from you under Medicare for All. If you want to destroy the economy, and vote the Green New Deal. If you want to change America and basically be ashamed of our country, empower this radical element in the Democratic Party. So I agree with you in this regard. We got to prosecute the case that the choices on the issues that matter to you as a family are very much real and different. And if you believe in law and order, vote Republican. Clint, two more. Is there a realistic plan to get a handle on our debt and deficits? Great question. Nobody talks about it, but the Greenspan Commission in 1983 came up with a way to save Social Security from bankruptcy. We extended the Social Security retirement age from 65 to 67. It actually worked. After this election, we need to sit down and talk about entitlement reform. Younger people need to work a bit longer. People in my income level, I'll have a military retirement. I can pay a little more into Social Security and Medicare, that's the way to deal with the debt. It's a bipartisan solution like Reagan and Tip O'Neill did in 1983, something like the Simpson-Bowles Commission. And I'm hoping after this election, Republicans and Democrats will reform entitlements to save Medicare and Social Security, ask people like me who can pay a little more to pay a little more, ask younger people to work a little bit longer because we live longer. Things like that add up over time, and that will be one of the reasons we get out of debt. The best way to help get out of debt is grow the economy, and I'm excited about the economy coming back strong in 2021. Rick, please picture a collar. Thank you. That one, I think. Thank you very much. I got a large shirt, and I should have had a medium shirt, but I've gained weight, and it's just fine. Hard to find the right shirt, Rick, but sorry about the distraction. Okay, who's this? What's her name? Chester. It's an interesting name. What are you doing to minimize voter fraud? I think we need to stop the movement to mandate vote by mail at the federal level. The best thing I can do is stop the Democratic Party from taking over state election systems and running it from the federal government. Ballot harvesting, where you go around and basically fill out people's ballot, all that stuff they're trying to do in the Phase 4 stimulus package. I'm not going to vote for any package that federalizes the election process, mandates mail-in, mail voting, and legitimizes harvesting of ballots. That's what I can do. Last question. Fred, what about hazard pay for healthcare workers? Great question. I wasn't so sure about that, but I'm willing to do it right now. I'm sorry about the caller there. I'm willing to consider that, having listened to what they're going through, working double shifts, just wearing themselves out. So anything we can do to help frontline workers. We're talking about doctors and nurses, but really the nursing staff who are not, they don't make $150,000 a year, sort of the middle level nursing, to have a sort of a bonus program. I think that would go a long way, and that's the least we could do to help these people. So I'm actually thinking about that. With that, I'm going to finish my Coke Zero and go back to work and head to Florence and enjoy this a bunch. I'll just say this. It's tough right now. It's going to get better. We're better off today than we were in April and March. We got more PPE. We got better drugs. The mortality rate is going down. Wear a mask right here. Put your mask on. Clean your hands, and just don't go crazy. Use common sense. We'll get through this thing, but a vaccine, once it hits the market, then I think we'll turn the corner. God bless, and enjoy the summer.